She was a trailblazer, a television icon who changed the world from the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. But behind the uniform and that confident smile, Nichelle Nichols held on to a truth about what really happened on the set of Star Trek. A secret she kept for over 50 years. Just before she passed, her story came into full focus. And what she confirmed will change the way you see the legendary show forever. To really get the weight of her final confirmations, you have to understand the world she stepped into. Grace Dell Nichols was born in Robbins, Illinois, on December 28, 1932. From day one, she was a performer, a singer and dancer with dreams much bigger than her small town. Her family history was a complex American story of race and identity, which fueled a fire in her from a young age. She trained hard and started her career as a singer and model in Chicago, quickly making a name for herself. She was discovered by the one and only Duke Ellington and even toured with his band. She had her sights set on Broadway, the ultimate goal for any performer. But Hollywood in the 50s and 60s, that was a different animal. For a black woman, the roles were usually limited to maids or servants. Nichelle wasn't having any of that. She had a presence, a fire that you just couldn't ignore. She landed a part in a TV series by a writer with big ideas, a man named Gene Roddenberry. The two had a brief relationship that ended before their most famous project, but they built a professional respect that would change television. When Roddenberry started casting for his wild new sci-fi show, Star Trek, he needed someone special for his communications officer. He'd been inspired by the Swahili word Uhuru, meaning freedom. He imagined a character who was brilliant, competent, and an equal on a diverse crew exploring the galaxy. Nichelle Nichols was perfect. She even suggested tweaking the name to the softer Uhura, making the role her own before filming even began. When Star Trek hit the airwaves in 1966, nobody had ever seen anything like it. And they'd certainly never seen anyone like Lieutenant Uhura. Here was a black woman on the bridge of a starship, not as a helper, but as a senior officer and an expert. Her image was revolutionary. It was a vision of a future where racism was ancient history, a future that felt galaxies away from the reality of 1960s America. For millions of viewers, especially young people of color, Uhura was more than a character. She was a promise. Whoopi Goldberg famously recalled seeing Uhura on screen and yelling to her family, "Come quick! There's a black lady on television and she ain't no maid." That was the power of Nichelle Nichols. She wasn't just acting. She was making a statement. She was showing the world what was possible. But as she would later confirm, the perfect future on screen was hiding a much rockier reality behind the scenes. The fight for equality wasn't just a TV show theme, it was her daily battle. For decades, Nichelle Nichols was the definition of grace. At fan conventions, she'd greet everyone with that brilliant smile, sharing the same polished stories about her time on the Enterprise. She talked about the fun, the family atmosphere, and the groundbreaking nature of the show. And of course, she told the incredible story of meeting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a tale that became central to her legacy. These were the stories the public loved, the neat and tidy version of a trailblazer's journey. But behind the scenes, there were always whispers. Rumors of tension on the Star Trek set, professional jealousies, and quiet discrimination circulated for years. For 50 years, Nichelle stayed silent on the worst of it. Back in the 60s and 70s, speaking out would have been career-ending for a black actress. It might have damaged the show's progressive image, an image she knew was inspiring millions. So she carried the weight of those secrets by herself. In her 1994 autobiography, Beyond Uhura, she finally started to pull back the curtain. She wrote about the difficult relationships with some co-stars and the fights she had just to get her character taken seriously. But even then, she was diplomatic. It was only over her final years, through a collection of interviews and the words of those closest to her, that the full story came out. This wasn't some single, dramatic deathbed confession. It was a lifetime of quiet struggles finally getting a voice. That silence was forced on her by an era that made her choose between her own truth and her public mission. She chose the mission. But what fans never saw was that the confident officer on the bridge was often fighting off frustration just moments before the cameras started rolling. The equality she represented on TV was something she had to fight for constantly in her own life. Before she passed, Nichelle confirmed that the journey to the final frontier was anything but a smooth ride. The official story of Star Trek is one of a happy family. But Nichelle Nichols confirmed a painful truth. She was often made to feel like a glorified telephone operator in space, and that her role was expendable. This wasn't just a feeling. It was a battle she fought every day. From the start, some people weren't thrilled about a black woman having such a prominent role. Nervous NBC executives, worried about the racial tensions of the 60s, were hesitant. Gene Roddenberry fought to keep her on the bridge, but the pressure was always there, and you could see that pressure in the scripts. Nichelle would get her lines only to find them cut in later drafts. Meaningful scenes and character moments would disappear, reducing her to her classic line, "Hailing frequencies open, Captain." In her autobiography, she wrote about the deep frustration of watching her role get smaller and smaller, but it went further than just cutting lines. She later confirmed that her image was often left out of promotional materials and photos meant to advertise the series. Here she was, a main cast member making history, and she was being quietly erased from the show's public identity. She described it as a constant painful reminder that no matter how much the audience loved Uhura, some people in power still saw her as secondary. A major source of this tension, she revealed, came from her difficult relationship with the show's adieu star, William Shatner. While she called the rest of the cast a family, especially her close friend Leonard Nimoy, Spock, her dynamic with Shatner was different. In Beyond Uhura, she called him an insensitive, hurtful egotist. While that sent a shockwave through the fandom, the reality she described was one of constant professional friction, where his status as the lead often meant her role and others got pushed to the side. Even more shocking was an act of deliberate sabotage. For a long time, she wasn't getting her fan mail, and there were mountains of it. She later confirmed that studio executives were hiding it from her. Their motive was cruel. If she didn't know how popular she was, she'd have no power in contract talks. It was a calculated move to undermine her worth. The composed Lieutenant Uhura on screen was, in reality, a warrior fighting for her career against a system that wasn't quite ready for the future it was selling. In November 1968, television history was made. The Star Trek episode Plato's Stepchildren aired what is now famous as the first scripted interracial kiss on American TV. In the scene, aliens with telekinetic powers force Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura to kiss. It was an explosive moment, shattering one of America's biggest taboos just a year after the Supreme Court decision that struck down laws against interracial marriage. For decades, the kiss has been held up as a symbol of Star Trek's bravery, but what most people don't know is the ugly, intense fight that happened behind the scenes to stop that kiss from ever airing. Nichelle confirmed just how deep the resistance went, revealing that the historic moment almost never happened. When NBC executives found out about the kiss in the script, they panicked. They were terrified of backlash, especially from TV stations in the segregated South. They rushed to the set, dead set on changing the scene. The pressure was immense. Nichelle said the executives came up with some absolutely ridiculous alternatives. One of the most offensive ideas was to have the aliens force Spock to kiss Uhura instead. Their twisted logic was that it would be more acceptable for a half-alien to kiss a black woman than for a white man to do so. To his credit, William Shatner was furious. He knew how important this was and fought back. But the network wouldn't budge. They gave a final order: shoot the scene 2 ways. One take with the kiss as written, and a second, safe take where Kirk and Uhura would turn their heads at the last second, faking it. This is where Nichelle and Shatner staged a brilliant little rebellion. As she later recalled with a laugh, They decided to sabotage every single safe take. Each time they were supposed to fake the kiss, one of them would intentionally mess it up. Shatner would cross his eyes or make a goofy face, and they'd both flub their lines, making the footage completely unusable. "I wish someone had the tapes of all of the times we flubbed the kiss," Nichols said. "They were fantastic." They backed the studio into a corner. By the end of the day, the only good footage they had was the real kiss. The executives had lost. The kiss aired, and the mail poured in, more than Paramount had ever received for a single episode. And while some letters were angry, the vast majority were overwhelmingly positive, praising the show for its courage. This story isn't just about a kiss. It's about a secret act of defiance. It was a moment where two actors conspired to make sure the future wouldn't be censored by the prejudice of the present. Prejudice of the present. By the end of Star Trek's first season, Nichelle Nichols was done. The constant fighting for lines, feeling sidelined, and the quiet racism had worn her down. Her first love was Broadway, and a great new role was waiting. Her mind was made up. She walked into Gene Roddenberry's office and handed in her resignation. Roddenberry was devastated. He begged her to stay, telling her how crucial she was to the show's message. He asked her to just take the weekend to think it over. She agreed, but in her heart, she was already gone. What happened next is the most famous story of Nichelle's life, but it's often told without the full context of her frustration. That weekend, she went to a NAACP fundraiser. An organizer told her, "Ms. Nichols, there's someone here who says he's your biggest fan." Nichelle agreed to meet him. When she turned, she saw Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. walking toward her, smiling. She was stunned. As she later said, she figured the biggest fan would have to wait because she was about to meet her hero. But then Dr. King reached her and said, "Yes, Ms. Nichols, I am your greatest fan." He told her how much he admired her work on Star Trek and the dignity she brought to Uhura. Still planning to leave, she thanked him and said, "Well, thank you so much, Dr. King. I'm really going to miss my co-stars." Dr. King's smile faded. "What are you talking about?" he asked. She explained her plans to go to Broadway, and that's when he said the words that would change her life and television forever. "You cannot," he told her sternly. "You are part of history," he explained with passion. "For the first time on television, we are being seen as we should be seen. You have the first non-stereotypical role. This is not a black role. This is not a female role. It is a role of such value." He told her that Star Trek was the only show he and his wife, Coretta, let their young children stay up to watch. "Don't you understand," he said, "that you are our image of where we're going? You are reflecting what we are fighting for." Nichelle was speechless. She had seen her job as just a job, and a frustrating one. Dr. King saw it as a vital part of the civil rights movement. He saw her as a symbol of hope. "At that moment," she said, "the world tilted for me." She understood that her personal dreams were small compared to this much bigger cause. On Monday morning, she went back to Gene Roddenberry's office and told him the entire story. As she spoke, tears welled up in Roddenberry's eyes. When she finished, he pulled out her resignation letter, which he had already torn to pieces. "Welcome back," he said. "This wasn't just a fan meeting. It was a command from a leader of a revolution." She chose to stay, not in defeat, but with a powerful new purpose given to her by a king. For years, Nichelle's confirmations came out in pieces, first in her book, then in interviews. But her ultimate confirmation wasn't about one single event. It was about her final view on her entire journey. Despite the racism and the professional slights, she confirmed that the fight was worth it. Her legacy was her victory. Her role as Uhura didn't end with the show. It grew. In 1977, she gave a speech challenging NASA, asking, "Where are my people?" They took her seriously and hired her to lead a revolutionary recruitment program. Her mission, bring women and people of color into the astronaut corps. This was the ultimate proof of Dr. King's words. She was no longer just acting out the future. She was building it. The program was a massive success. Her recruits included Dr. Sally Ride, the first American woman in space, and Guion Bluford, the first African American in space. Dr. Mae Jemison, the first woman of color in space, directly cites Uhura as her inspiration. Nichelle had turned a TV role into a real-world force for change. But as she was celebrated publicly, a painful private battle was unfolding. In her final years, as she struggled with dementia, Nichelle became the center of a heartbreaking conservatorship battle. The fight involved her only son, Kyle Johnson, her former manager, Gilbert Bell, and a concerned friend, Angelique Fawcett. There were ugly accusations of financial exploitation and manipulation. Her son claimed he needed to protect her, while others accused him of isolating her. It was a tragic echo of the battles she'd fought all her life. The trailblazer who projected such strength was now in a fight for her own autonomy. Her home, which she had bought in 1982 and filled with memories, was sold, with the money placed in the conservatorship. This final, sad chapter reveals that even after a lifetime of breaking down barriers, the fight for dignity never really ended for Nichelle Nichols. She passed away on July 30th, 2022, at the age of 89, leaving behind a universe she had changed forever. Nichelle Nichols' legacy is as vast as the galaxy she navigated on screen. It's a legacy written not just on film, but in the history of civil rights and space exploration. She was more than an actress. She was a force of nature who used her platform to chart a new course for all of us. Her confirmations about the hardships she faced on Star Trek don't tarnish the show's legacy. They make her achievement even more incredible. They show us that her portrayal of Uhura wasn't just a performance, it was an act of daily courage. She stared down discrimination, fought for her place, and held on to a vision of a better future. Even when her own present was a struggle, the seeds she planted grew into a forest of inspiration. Her work with NASA literally changed the face of the American space program, opening doors for generations of women and minorities who dreamed of the stars because they saw her there first. Her influence is still felt today. Actresses like Sonequa Martin Green, who became the first black female lead in Star Trek history, stand on the shoulders of the giant who came before them. In the end, Nichelle Nichols' greatest confirmation was her life itself. She proved that one woman's grace, talent, and unbreakable spirit could truly change the world. She took the lemons of prejudice and made lemonade. She took a role that could have been small and made it monumental. She showed us a future where we could all be equals, and then spent her life trying to build it. Her hailing frequencies may be closed now, but her message of hope and equality will echo across the galaxy forever. Nichelle Nichols' story is a powerful reminder that behind every icon, there's a real person with a real story of struggle and triumph. If you were inspired by her incredible life and want to hear more true stories about the legends who shaped our world, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update.